welcome back. It's still Business Morning right here on Channels Television, and we're discussing at this time the issue of illicit financial flows, which a lot of international bodies, IMF included, have said is costing Nigeria about $18 billion annually. And on the continent, that's the African continent, Nigeria accounts for 20% of total losses. Of course, we know Nigeria is the giant of Africa, but I wish we're not giants in such cases. But these are the issues that have been raised by a lot of bodies, Oxfam, IMF, and other bodies. Nigeria is looking to exit the grey list, and we hope we can have that eventually happen with a sustained plan to stay off that list. But let's discuss how we can do that with Dr. Vincent Ahonsi. Dr. Ahonsi is the Chief Executive of Movie Consulting Limited and joins us virtually to discuss some proposed recommendations that can keep us off this list and keep us out for good. Dr. Ahonsi, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, so I know you've already heard about the numbers and what Nigeria is losing, what Africa is losing when it comes to illicit financial flows. There are some recommendations. I wonder if you could share them with us and perhaps tell us where we could start from.
Thank you so much. The illicit financial flow out of Nigeria is quite worrisome. Because if you look at it, the minister talked about $18 billion annually. And if you put that at an average of 1,500 naira to a dollar, you're talking about 27 trillion naira annually. This is a big problem. Now, we don't have to start belaboring ourselves about how we got here. Because what is really important is how do we get ourselves out of where we found ourselves. And for us to do that, we need to know that IFFs, which is illicit financial flows, thrive more with transactions where you have big volumes. When we say big volumes, we mean in the extractive industries, oil and gas industry, we have the manufacturing industry, we have the agricultural sector, and of course, we now have the communication service provider sector. So these are the sectors that we really need to look into, and of course, the big one is the what I call the political, governance of the structure of the country itself. So these are the large volume areas that Nigeria needs to be looking at. Now, how does Nigeria go about doing all this? First, before I go to the issue of the recommendations and how Nigeria has fared so far, and what Nigeria needs to do going forward to be able to find itself in that El Dorado. We found out that misinvoicing is one of the biggest things biggest variable by which there is illicit financial flow out of developing countries, especially in Nigeria. You have the exporters. The exporters, they may under-invoice goods to reduce their taxable income, or at the same time, they could hide their profits in their offshore accounts by simply, under invoicing goods that they are exporting out of the country. One, Nigeria loses income through taxes. Two, they are able to move that money out, which is capital flight, out of the country illegally. The other avenue is where we have the importers themselves. You have an importer who is over-invoicing their purchases from abroad. One, they do this to move capital out of Nigeria illegally. And what they do, you've got, for example, maybe you have a $5 million import to do, and these are generic figures, and you over-invoice it to $85 million. And of course, the money you are going to use to import those goods are in Nigeria. And probably you source the FX from CBN, then you now move this money out of Nigeria, and when you get there, you over-invoice just $5 million worth of goods that you are bringing to Nigeria. You over-invoice them as 85. One, you have moved 85 million out, you are bringing back 5 million. You can just do the maths, what Nigeria has lost as a country. So these are the mechanisms. We don't have to be talking about the issue of embezzlement of public funds, the criminal networks, the multinational corporations that are now what they hide within their service and their goods, what they do in terms of their leasing, in terms of their service provision, in terms of their hiring, in terms of their reimbursables and all that. So these are the problems that Nigeria has as a country that they have to look into. Now, there is a global body called the FAFT. It's the Financial Action Task Force. This is the global money laundering and terrorist financing watchdog. And what does it do? FAFT sets out international standards, and these standards are meant to prevent these illegal activities of money laundering, terrorism, financing of proliferation, and all that. And they bring out these recommendations that are very robust. And these recommendations, they are about 40 in number. We call them R1 to R40. And these recommendations provide the comprehensive framework of measures that help countries and jurisdictions to tackle illicit financial flows. And these 40 recommendations are now grouped into 7 major distinct areas. Like we have the anti-money laundering and combating financial terrorism policies and coordination. We have money laundering and sophistication. We have terrorism financing and financing of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, preventive measures, transparency and beneficial ownership, powers and responsibilities of competent authorities. These are all the subgroups. Now, there was what we call a joint evaluation or a joint assessment that took place between Nigeria and this global body. And we call it the mutual evaluation. And that one, and there was a report issued in 2021. And that report put Nigeria where it thought it was appropriate in each of the recommendations. But as we speak, there are 4 variables that we use to measure how jurisdictions perform as far as these different recommendations are concerned. It's either a country is compliant, or is largely compliant, or is partially compliant, or is not compliant with those recommendations. And so far, 36 out of those 40 recommendations, you find that Nigeria either is compliant or is largely compliant with it. It's only 4 of them that you have Nigeria partially compliant. And when you go into it, like someone like me, I am not surprised when I get to know what are the recommendations that Nigeria is really not, is partially compliant with, that is keeping us. By the way, there are 2 lists that the FAFT uses to describe countries of special interest or countries that need active monitoring or escalated monitoring. That means countries that are not following the recommendation, that their systems are not robust enough, or the countries that their financial state or financial health is not good enough. And this is globally, flagged to all countries to know. Even if you want to invest in a country, the first thing you want to look at is this country, is it compliant? Is it on the black list or is it on the gray list? Nigeria happened to be on the gray list with a couple of other countries. So every Nigeria is now saying, how do we get out of this gray list? Now, again, that takes us back to the recommendation that Nigeria has not either compliant or comply with or are not largely comply with. Now, there are 4 of them, like I said. The first one is called the Recommendation 12, which has got to do with PAPs. PAPs, in this sense, are politically exposed persons. I am not surprised. I will talk more about that one. The next one is about new technologies. And of course, again, when you talk about new technologies, that Nigeria has not fully complied with that, I'm not surprised. Then we have the designated non-financial businesses and professions. And for Nigeria to actually get out of illicit financial flow gray list, these 4 recommendations have to be critically looked into in country and it has to be complied with.
All right.
Now, politically, sorry.
All right, Dr. Honsi, we're actually out of time. I guess we'd have to invite you another time, to dissect those points even more. But we really appreciate your time this morning. Dr. Vincent Ahonsi is the Chief Executive of Novik Consulting Limited. And having so much data, you can guess he was a former country director of Oxfam. So thank you so much, Dr. Ahonsi. And I wonder if we could have you maybe like next week so we can conclude this conversation. Do you think you could oblige us that?
That would be good.
All right, thank you so much.
Because I think that, yeah, thank you so much for having me.
All right, so we hope to have Dr. Ahonsi next week, most likely on Friday, so that we can conclude that conversation because, you know, it's time.